actually think chicken soup is better than any of the traditional over-the-counter medications that are like dextromethorphan. It's the society we live in that we have to really be hyper vigilant about any information we consume, any food we consume, it's just unfortunate. The bottom line is that respiratory symptoms are caused by inflammation. Inflammation is a very fine-tuned, tiered process. So you need to help the body deal with the inflammation, but also deal with the threat or the virus at the same time. There's a problem that humans have not been able to solve with their structured, logical, thinking, that maybe we need to look to nature.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Sovereign Health Podcast. My name is Andy Schoonover, and we're on a mission to inspire radical personal responsibility for both the financial and physical aspects of your health. We get the joy of hosting thought leaders who are reimagining how healthcare is delivered. We're excited to have Dr. Nazlie Latefi on the pod today. She is a life sciences expert, holds a PhD in molecular biology and neuroscience, and is the co-founder and chief scientific officer of Biovanta. Dr. Nazlie, good to have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I first met you a few months ago at the Meat Mafia podcast, or the Meat Mafia, what do they call it? The Health Summit?
The event, yeah.
The event. We just call it the event. And as I was walking through the list of people who were presenting, your name popped up. And I don't know if you've heard this before, but there's always this level of skepticism with drug companies, especially over the last few years. And so I was like, what is this Dr. Nazlie going to talk about? But it was so compelling what you were able to share. I'd love for you as a co-founder, I'm a fellow co-founder, I'd love to understand the why you started your company. Let's start there to give the group some context.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it was great meeting you at the conference too, and such a great group of people. Everybody, really focused on doing the best for their health. Not a lot of drug companies, quote unquote drug companies at the conference, and I get that. I personally try to avoid drugs at all costs. So this is a quote unquote. Well, we have a supplement as well, so it's a supplement and drug company. We like to call ourselves like a health and wellness focused company. But we also very science based. So, I'm just as skeptical as you are of drugs, and I don't take any myself. So, this is a biotech drug company, whatever you want to call it, founded by someone who does not like to take drugs. And our approach is really to look at the underlying issue and try to restore the body's ability to heal itself. And we're really focused on respiratory disease. That's the focus that we took with the company when we founded it in 2016. And it sort of happened serendipitously. I've always been,
as many startups do, right? Serendipity is kind of fun in the startup land.
Exactly. Because there's a lot of different inputs that we have, just being in the world, and things come to us, ideas come to us, and it's not necessarily things that we could have foreseen. And those are often like the best innovations. Hope so. But so I did my PhD in molecular neuroscience, and in particular, I was studying these little because they're microscopic, but attachment factors or adhesion molecules that cells use to communicate with each other in brain development. And a lot of those molecules are very similar to the ones that line our respiratory system and that are actually used for viruses to attach onto and to use as a door to enter our cells and infect. So like ACE2 is the door or receptor for COVID-19. There are different doors and receptors for different respiratory viruses, like rhinovirus and influenza. And so we started a company with that idea to help the body arm itself against these viruses. And those products are still in development. We have a lot of scientific studies behind them, and we're going to be publishing a paper about them soon. But in the course of developing those antivirals, we've also discovered that a lot of the over-the-counter treatments for respiratory symptoms are not really taking the best approach because they're caused by inflammation, the symptoms, and a lot of these over-the-counter drugs don't address that at all. They just either numb the pain or, mostly just numb the pain or really just like blunt the system without getting into the underlying cause.
So you're focused on respiratory viruses. What are the primary respiratory viruses that we as humans catch on a day-to-day basis? And then what are the drugs that we're going to currently to alleviate those symptoms?
Okay, yeah, great question. So before COVID-19, and I mean, COVID-19 is a coronavirus. Coronaviruses have always been around, but before COVID-19, they've normally been causing about 30% of common colds.
Okay.
But historically, the main respiratory viruses that affected humans were rhinoviruses and influenza viruses.
Okay.
And there's hundreds of different types of rhinoviruses and influenza viruses. That's why they can be so hard to control, and that's why they produce different sort of like quote unquote epidemics every season. So for the most part, it's historically been rhinoviruses and influenza, and they each have their own like attachment factor or door of how they enter the respiratory system. And 99.9% of the time, they enter through the nose or the nasopharynx, which is directly behind your nose and as you go into your throat. So. So we were perplexed as to, why anyone wasn't really focusing on that.
Interesting. So rhinovirus, you hear influenza, flu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we all have heard of that. Rhinovirus, not as much. Is the rhinovirus something that is kind of as common as the flu, or why do we not hear about the rhinovirus as often as we hear about the flu, or is it just called something different in everyday vernacular?
So the rhinovirus causes about 70% of common colds.
Okay, so it's cold is rhinovirus, flu is influenza.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't make that clear.
No, that's good. That's why I wanted to clarify. And so what is wrong with the drugs that we're currently taking? What drugs are we taking for this? And then like, what is wrong with those drugs as we're currently taking them?
Yeah, okay. I'll answer that question, but I want to backtrack to your previous question.
Sure.
Because it kind of is related. So rhinovirus, people usually think, oh, it's just a cold,
Mm-hmm.
It's going to resolve itself. And in most cases it will. But rhinovirus infections can be deadly for people that have asthma. Okay. If you have a rhinovirus infection for a long time and you don't care for it properly, especially in children, it could lead to them developing asthma. So it's more serious than like, oh, I'll just get over it. It really does matter how you take care of it. Plus, the sick days that it causes, is a huge economic burden. So just wanted to say that. Influenza, of course, is much more deadly. Not as deadly as COVID, but, a few 100,000 people die of influenza in the U.S. Every year on average. So it's significant as well. So most people usually either, use remedies, home remedies, like chicken soup or, hot teas, which are fine to, when they have a cold. And that's probably better than most over-the-counter drugs that are on the market because those, as I was saying previously, don't really do anything for inflammation. They just blunt the symptoms, and most of them actually have a neurological component, and some of them are pseudo opioids. So they were developed, from opioid type drugs. And so they work on the nervous system to blunt or numb the pain, or some decongestants, like phenylephrine, which was recently taken off the market, basically constrict the blood vessels. So none of this is really doing anything for the inflammation, and it could be making it worse. It could be, we haven't tested this directly, but theoretically it could be a possibility of why people go on to develop asthma. Because inflammation is very fine-tuned and very complex. And so if you don't address inflammation properly, it could lead to worse and worse tiers of inflammation, because the body has a tiered system. And that over excessive inflammation is actually what causes asthma. So you're kind of priming your body to be more likely to overreact. So
what I'm hearing is that when we go to CVS, Walgreens, wherever we go and get our over-the-counter drugs, what we're doing is we're just alleviating symptoms. Because I've got a cold, I got a rhinovirus, right? I want a decongestant so I can actually talk and I can sleep and I can do the things that I want to do on a normal day-to-day basis. But those are just taking care of symptoms. They're not actually addressing the root cause of what is going on with that virus. Is that a simplified, description, accurate, simplified description of what's going on with the drugs that we're currently taking over the counter through, our local pharmacy?
Well, they say that they're alleviating symptoms, but they're not actually even doing that.
Okay.
Because, and many of these have been studied, numerous clinical trials, usually by the companies themselves, and they've been found not to work. So I'll go through a couple of them one by one. So decongestants, popular ones are guaifenesin, which is in Mucinex. We also have phenylephrine, which is recently was taken off the market by the FDA. There's also pseudoephedrine, which I think the FDA recommended in lieu of phenylephrine since it would been taken off the market. But I'll talk about phenylephrine and pseudoephedrine first, and then I'll get into guaifenesin. So phenylephrine and pseudoephedrine basically. So when you get congested, it's because your blood vessels in your nasal area are dilated, and it's just causing a lot of swelling. But that's your body's response to the inflammatory threat, and it's your body's way of increasing the mucus flow and the blood flow to get rid of the infection. And so what these decongestants do is they go in and they constrict the blood vessels. Well, that's not really effective because it's been proven that you get a rebound effect. And also, again, you're doing nothing for the inflammation. So you actually could be making it worse. Now, why people take
your body's natural response, we're actually inhibiting our body's natural response to get rid of this virus. Is that?
I think you're actually giving your body something else to deal with in addition to.
Okay.
It's trying to get rid of the inflammation, and you're not letting it do that, but then you're actually sidetracking it with, now I have to worry about, why is the blood vessels constricted? You know what I mean? So, so you have a rebound effect. It doesn't really do anything to the symptoms when you measure them. It might initially open you up, but then, you get closed again. There's no, it doesn't do anything. They've measured it over a day.
Temporary satisfaction.
Yeah, temporary satisfaction. So that's basically what it does. And then guaifenesin is found usually in Mucinex. It's a mucolytic, which means that it loosens up the mucus. Again, congestion is your body's way of trying to rid itself of the infection. It's also been studied, and it's been found not to be effective. They studied it like over a day or so, and found that the actual weights of the mucus that had been released by people who were taking it was no different than placebo. And a lot of people say, okay, like I want to take these things because I want to sleep, or
Right.
Isn't sleep good for me? Yes, but especially with pseudoephedrine, it's a stimulant. It's not going to let you sleep. It's going to cause you other issues.
Mm-hmm.
Guaifenesin also has some serious side effects as well, plus the fact that it doesn't work. So you're sleeping for like 8 or 10 or 12 hours, like over a long period, a longer than whatever couple hour period of time. It's not going to decongest you. So, what's the point? I mean, there are a lot of things that have been found to work as well, which are saline nasal sprays, neti pots. So at least that's helping you clear yourself, but it's not giving your body another thing to worry about.
Right. So some of these home remedies, are they actually effective, or are they, as some people call them, old wives' tales? Like, yeah, have a cup of soup when you're, feeling congested. Is it actually working, or what is kind of the physiological, thing going on there that makes us feel better as a result of having, mom's chicken soup?
I actually think chicken soup is better than any of the over-the-counter, traditional over-the-counter medications that are like dextromethorphan, guaifenesin. And these are, you're not going to see these as brand names, but like, turn your medicine around, and if it has any of these, like phenylephrine, pseudoephedrine, I think you're better off actually with chicken soup. We've created a product, Biovanta, which actually helps your body deal with the inflammation and balance the inflammation. So your body is able to, it's a very, we studied it for over 10 years, the exact formula and everything to help your body deal with inflammation in an effective way, because some inflammation is good. It's needed to help you rid yourself of the virus. But getting back to the home remedies, I think at least they're supporting your body. Chicken soup, especially if it's from pasture-raised chickens, has a really great amino acid profile. And there's certain amino acids like cysteine and different ones that help your body repair itself. So, I don't think they're that bad. But there's a lot of things that are unproven, like a lot of claims that people, I think you should look, when you take something, even if it's homeopathic or over the counter, look at the ingredients and just, do a Google search to see if there's any clinical efficacy behind it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge with some of these homeopathic, naturopathic, holistic, is there's lots of claims, and there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there trying to sell you a bunch of stuff that is just false, right? And so we as consumers who don't have, a PhD in neurology, are confused, confused as to what is right, what is not right. And so, is there an easy way to kind of look at something that we are sold and say, hey, this is legitimate, or this is not legitimate? Or is that, impossible? Because most of these drugs or supplements, whatever, there's no FDA study. And even if there was, sometimes we have to question those studies. Like, how do you get to the bottom of like what actually can help our bodies heal?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I get it that it's very, very difficult. And, a lot of people are dishonest. And that's unfortunate. I mean, it's just the society we live in that we have to really be hyper vigilant about any information we consume, any food we consume, any, I mean, it's just unfortunate. Like I don't, I mean, you just have to really do a lot of research, unfortunately. And the beginnings of the homeopathic movement are, really, I really support, because it's really just about freedom of choice of people, of having alternatives like to drugs. So if you want to if you want to treat your body in a more natural way, you definitely should have choices, and there's a lot of supplements that have, not the supplements are the same as homeopathic remedies. They're two, completely different things. But, there are a lot of non-drug alternatives that do have scientific validation. But unfortunately, a lot of people or a lot of companies take advantage of the freedom, like people do. Hopefully there's going to be more regulation by the FTC, because I think the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is what really regulates the claims, whereas the FDA actually regulates mainly safety. But hopefully there's going to be more of a crackdown on false claims. And there's a lot of backlash against some, members of the homeopathic community as well, because some of them also make false claims.
Yeah.
So.
I think that, it's interesting to me that in healthcare generally, so I'm stepping up maybe 20,000 feet, there is a definite misunderstanding as to how our bodies operate generally, because we've been raised on a food pyramid that clearly has massive issues associated with it. We've got all these special interests from the outside who are trying to influence regulation, trying to influence legislation, and clearly, we've got our food pyramid probably inversed. We need to turn it upside down, put it on its head. Mm-hmm. And there's a doctor here in Austin that's pretty well known now, Peter Attia. I don't know if you know Peter Attia, but he's done some very deep dive scientific research on nutrition and exercise. And I wish there was somebody out there, maybe there is, that will do deep dives on a lot of these homeopathic supplements, things like that, and say, hey, here's a repository of scientific research on all these things that people are telling us are going to cure, whatever, by using their special formula. And that kind of does bring me to is there a repository out there? Like, where would I go on Google to find out if the supplement that somebody wants to tell me that says it's going to, heal my arthritis, whatever, I'm making up something, actually has validated information? And then is that information true and accurate and not influenced by, third parties? Is there a place I can go and find that?
That's an excellent question, and I've actually I've thought about that. I've thought about actually, I haven't had time, obviously.
Let's do it. It's a business idea. Totally. Here we go. We're going to co-found this together.
Would love to do it. Yeah, it's definitely something that's needed. It's definitely something. So it reminds me of the Environmental Working Group. I don't know if you're familiar, but they. I forgot what the repository is called, but it's by the Environmental Working Group, and I use it all the time. They're mainly focused on beauty products and personal care products, because there has historically been and still is a horrendous amount of carcinogenic chemicals, endocrine disruptors in beauty products that women use, like horrendous. I mean, thousands and thousands of chemicals that just shouldn't be put on our bodies. And, skin is like, an organ, basically. It is an organ. It absorbs everything. So the Environmental Working Group created this database that you can actually scan the barcode of a product or put in an ingredient and see, and they have it's a very easy to understand, the carcinogenic profile, how much it's been studied, the fragrances, whether that's likely to cause allergies. So yeah, I have thought about something, like that along those lines. And yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
I'm
Here we go.
totally.
You heard it here first. I do want to go back, and sorry for going down the rabbit hole of homeopathic, but I do think that Biovanta is different from everything I've heard from you. And I'd love to just get maybe a little bit more into the details of how is Biovanta different than all of those chemicals that you just described that I can't even pronounce. I'd love to hear kind of the approach that you guys are taking and why it's so different than all the Mucinex and crazy stuff that we get from our local Walgreens or CVS.
Yeah, sure. I would love to get into that. And thank you so much for being a supporter.
Yeah.
It means a lot because I know you're somebody that does their research, and so it means a lot. So first of all, the Mucinexes of the world and the dextromethorphans, the Sudafeds, et cetera, the Robitussin, those are all FDA regulated over-the-counter drugs. And the FDA is starting to crack down on those as well, as it recently did with phenylephrine. And those have been grandfathered from decades, like from the 60s. They basically got on the market when there was nothing better, when our science was very limited. I don't even think inflammation was like a word. I think it was like basically like I remember my mom when I was a kid saying, oh, it's, it's swollen, like your ankle is swollen. Or, that was the word that we had. We didn't even know what inflammation was, right? DNA was just discovered in the actual molecule in 1953, never mind like anything about genetic testing. So that's where science was when these things came on the market. And it's just been so hard to take them off. Mainly because, I guess people think we have more serious things to worry about, like, cancer and diabetes. And of course, yes, yeah, they're more serious, but it's not to say that respiratory diseases are not serious because, they have a huge economic impact, and a lot, and because of a lot of other health issues that people are dealing with, they could be deadly to some people. And, they could lead to pandemics. And then, so that's the FDA over-the-counter drugs. And then we have the homeopathic remedies. And those have also been grandfathered from the pharmacopoeia, which is a, hundreds-year-old, basically, compendium of, different natural things that people have been taking. Most of them have not been scientifically studied. But because of some FDA regulations, I think, I'm not an expert on the history of it, but I think that there was once in FDA, a head of the FDA that was a homeopathic physician, and he pushed to have this, allowed by the FDA, which is fine. I mean, like freedom, I think people should definitely have freedom to choose. But then, it goes too far. So people should definitely have science and have claims that are founded. And that's really what makes Biovanta different. We are totally in favor of natural remedies of any kind, actually like in favor of those in lieu of pharmacological drugs. Just because the natural approach is really, it's more balanced with your body. And it's also, there's a question of toxicity. Not every single natural thing is non-toxic, I know. But in terms of like for the environment and breaking it down and getting it out of your body, something that's natural is not going to be stuck in your cells and do unknown things like years later, right? Usually things that are natural that are bad for you, they'll make you sick like right away, because they're defenses that organisms have created to protect themselves. But something that's toxic from a chemical point of view, it's gonna persist in the environment, it's gonna persist in your body, And years and decades later, it might cause something, and people might not even, the medical community might not even make the connection. This is going back to the stuff that's in the, a lot of the beauty products. So that's why we really took a natural approach and a holistic approach, meaning like look at the whole system and really look at the underlying science and how does it all work together. And so, Biovanta really works with your body because at the bottom line is that respiratory symptoms are caused by inflammation. And inflammation is a very fine-tuned, tiered process. So you need to help the body deal with the inflammation, but also deal with the threat or the virus at the same time. So it's not to like shut off the inflammation completely, but we have a mix of ingredients that we call the mucosal immune complex, which works with your mucosal lining to strengthen it and help it deal with the viral threats, but also at the same time to balance inflammation just enough so that your body can heal.
So I have rhinovirus and I take Biovanta versus if I take Mucinex. Like what will my symptoms feel like? What will my virus feel like with Mucinex versus Biovanta? Is there a significant difference in how I feel, both short-term and kind of intermediate term by taking those two different types of maybe it's not drug, maybe, I don't know, Biovanta is considered a drug, but a drug versus the remedy, like how would I feel in those two scenarios?
Yeah, so Biovanta, we have, to answer your question, we have a dietary supplement and also an over-the-counter drug.
Okay.
We are an over-the-counter drug, but we use aspirin, which is much better at the precise inflammatory pathway. So that's the product that has the aspirin is the one that is the drug, but it's a specific dose and of aspirin, not too much, because too much actually causes more inflammation. And aspirin is different than ibuprofen and acetaminophen. First of all, because it has natural origins, and second of all, because it works precisely on the inflammatory pathway. But to answer your question about how you feel, I think when you take like a Mucinex or a Sudafed or something like that, you're gonna, for that specific symptom, like you'd be like, oh, initially, okay, my congestion,
it's gone.
It's gone. I mean, for some people, it may not be gone. For some people, it'll be gone. Right? Yeah. But then it's just going to come back, and you're still going to feel sick. You're just not going to feel like it's going to work on one specific thing, like because it's like the pseudoephedrine, it's dilating, or constricting your blood vessels, right? So it's going to be more like, whoa, okay, that thing's gone. Whereas like you take Biovanta and you're going to feel better. You will feel it, right away, but you're just going to keep getting better and better and better. The more, you progress, the more you take it, or you might feel, some people, just feel better right away because it's more of it works with your whole system. So inflammation in the respiratory system, it's not, it's actually all connected, and we're writing a paper on this right now. And we actually published one paper in 2021. So it's all connected. It's not like, because we did a clinical trial of Biovanta, and that's also publishing. That's a third paper that I'm thinking of. That's going to be published in hopefully a month or so. And we found that it was effective on all symptoms. So, our hunch was that the inflammation is all connected because your respiratory system, it's all connected. I mean, you see like on the outside of your body, you see like your nose, your mouth, your ears, your throat, but inside they actually converge. And, it's your nasopharynx and your oropharynx and your eustachian tubes. They all, drain into, your throat area. And So the inflammatory pathways are all interconnected. And so just because you have congestion doesn't mean you should treat just the congestion. You need to treat the inflammation so that it all heals itself. And so the clinical study we did, it enrolled 159 people in 4 different geographic areas in the U.S. And we found significant improvement with Biovanta throat spray on all different measures of cold symptoms. So it relieved congestion, sore throat, runny nose, so all different cold symptoms, and cough.
Yeah. So your sales pitch, if you will, is relieves symptoms. May not be as immediate. It might, but it may not be as immediate at some of the Mucinex and things like that. But over a longer period of time, you will have symptom relief. Goes to the core root of the problem, right? Which is, I think, what you said is kind of the inflammation component of this. And you don't have to put any drugs or you don't have to put any of these crazy chemicals into your body. I mean, what is the active ingredient of Biovanta? What is the active ingredient of Mucinex first? Again, because I don't remember what it's called. But I want to do a Biovanta versus a Mucinex. What is the active ingredient in Mucinex again?
Guaifenesin.
Guaifenesin. Okay, can't even remember what it's called. Can't pronounce it. Guaifenesin. What is the active ingredient ingredients in Biovanta?
So Biovanta is a formula that we have, and we call it the mucosal immune complex because they work together.
Okay.
So mainly we have COX enzyme inhibitors. Those are the enzymes that are responsible mainly for the inflammation in the pathway. And also they work together. So it has lysozyme and lactoferrin, which are 2 components of colostrum and whey protein. These amazing foods that nourish us. And also COX inhibitors, which aspirin is a COX inhibitor. Aloe vera is as well. We have aloe vera, and wintergreen oil can act as well. So it's really a formula that we honed over 10 years, and you will feel it right away. You definitely will. I can't think of an analogy, but like Mucinex is more like, oh wow, it's kind of like a punch in the face. Whereas like Biovanta is more like, oh, I'm getting strong. Like you'll just, you feel yourself like gradually healing. It's more like healing instead of blunting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what was your other question? The main ingredient in Mucinex is guaifenesin.
Guaifenesin.
So
versus a lot of the things that you just talked about, which all seem like they are naturally produced in our environment as opposed to chemically produced in labs. Is that accurate?
That's exactly accurate.
Yeah.
Lysozyme and lactoferrin are naturally produced in breast milk in all mammals, including humans.
Okay. So let's use what humans and animals already produce naturally and use those to heal our bodies as opposed to a chemical manufactured in a lab.
Yeah, exactly right. And even aspirin it comes from plants. It's produced in plants to help them protect themselves against viruses.
Okay. Question then is, I'm going to get asked the follow-up on what are the side effects of this? Have you seen in the study, you said 159 people, where there are significant side effects of using what you all are producing versus kind of the Mucinexes of the world?
We saw 0 side effects. I mean, we're publishing the paper, so, look at the paper.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that right now, but I believe we saw, I'm pretty sure we saw 0 side effects. We did screen for people that have allergies. Some people have allergies to aspirin. Some people have, and we have one product that doesn't contain aspirin as well. That's the dietary supplement, and it actually worked just as well as the drug on most symptoms. The one containing aspirin worked better on headache, if you can, as you can imagine, I think slightly better on cough, but they weren't significant differences. So the supplement worked just as well, but I don't remember. I think we had 0 side effects, and except if you have allergies to the ingredients, because the lactoferrin,
Which makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a whey protein derived. Okay. So if you have a milk allergy, it's very, very highly pure. We get it from Europe. Our ingredients are very important to us, the purity of our ingredients. Lysozyme, I believe, comes from either the US or Europe. So the lysozyme and lactoferrin are highly pure. So even if you do have a milk or egg allergy, speak with your doctor. You might not have a reaction because you might be actually allergic to something else. But I wouldn't tell you to take it without speaking to your doctor. But so that's the only thing that I can think of side effect wise is, of course, if you have an allergy.
And then what, as we were talking before we got started, kids change our lives a lot. Can kids use this?
So the only issue with that is that it contains COX inhibitors, which include aspirin. And some of the ingredients in the supplement are technically COX inhibitors, but they're much lower than you would find in aspirin. And historically, aspirin has been linked to Rye syndrome. So I would say speak to your doctor or pharmacist. My son takes it, How
old is your son?
No issues. He's 14. He's been taking it for 2 years. Okay. I guess he's been over 12. So
typically doesn't fall within that kid category when you're going through the drugstore. Okay. So maybe not for kids, but for others.
That's just a disclaimer. That I have to say. To be totally, safe. But I definitely think that it could definitely work in kids, and I definitely think that you should speak to your doctor or pharmacist.
Is it the COX inhibitors that are typically we need to think about with kids? Is that kind of the ingredient or the active ingredient or whatever in what you guys are doing that makes you pause on kids? Is that?
Yeah, but not even a lot because we use such a low amount. So we fine tune the dosage over many years of testing.
Okay.
It's definitely. I think it's like, a very small fraction of what you would find in aspirin, and aspirin has been the one that's linked to Rye syndrome. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So I just want to make a disclaimer here for the audience. I invited you on the podcast because I'm just so interested in alternative ways to solve for things that, right now the only option it feels like is a pharmaceutical option. And so, we met at the Meat Mafia. You're not paying me to do this. I'm just interested in how a scientist, right? And it sounds like your group is a group of scientists. They're not, witch doctors sitting in the kitchen stewing on things. Like these are scientists from well-regarded universities who are doing true research to figure out how can we put things in our bodies that are a lot more natural and a lot less, manufactured. And so, thank you for taking that on, because that is a contrarian view of how we do things, especially within our current, medical industrial complex. And so thank you for that. How do we find Biovanta? Where do we get it? If in case any of our, audience wants to try this versus, some of the garbage that's in our local pharmacies.
Well, thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Yes, we are a group of hardcore scientists. We're science focused and also natural focused. And the reason for natural, as I told you before, is because, that's usually, the best environmentally and health-wise. But also, if there's a problem that humans have not been able to solve with their structured, logical, thinking, then maybe we need to look to nature to try to, understand.
Yes.
More broadly, maybe something that we're overlooking.
Yes.
So that's also our curiosity, which all scientists should be open and curious. And so that's the approach. So we're definitely hardcore scientific based.
These are human induced. Many of these things are human induced illnesses.
Yes.
Diabetes has gone from 1% of the population in the 1970s to about 10% of the United States population here sitting in 2023. This is a human-induced epidemic. And I think that's an accurate description of our diabetes issue right now. And so we want to address a human-induced epidemic with human-created, manufactured chemicals, which I think just takes us down this death spiral of human-induced illnesses. And so it's like, man, let's go back to how has nature been doing this for tens of thousands of years, and in reality, since the beginning of time, right? Yeah. And so let's go back to that. And so I applaud you all, but I do want to make sure before we leave, where can we get this? Is it available?
Yeah.
Currently?
Yeah, so I was going to answer that question. Thank you for asking that, because so it's available on our website. Okay. It's available on Amazon. It's available at CVS, Walgreens, and
excellent.
Yeah, and so we have a where to buy thing if you want to buy it from retailers. If you want to find a brick and mortar retailer, we're also sold on Amazon. Okay. Our website would be the best, just because we control that inventory. But so it's I just want to say something from manufacturing standpoint, because we're so focused on using the best ingredients and the best quality. Our manufacturing approach sometimes is a little bit slower because we're very, very careful. So as a new company, that's been one of the biggest hurdles, because unfortunately it's very hard also to find U.S. manufacturers. Yeah. So we did though, and we have a manufacturer in Europe as well. But
do these have shelf lives?
So we have, it's a 2-year shelf life. Okay. And we also are very focused on finding the natural preservatives. So it's the highest quality. We do have, we're very well stocked. We focused on that. That's our main thing. But, if you can't find it in one place, then please go to our website or, be a little patient and definitely go to our website and look. And you can definitely find it from our website.
It sounds like what you need to do is, before we get into the cold and flu season, we're sitting here in October, it's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Is order it now so that you have it. It's got a 2-year shelf life. Perfect. So you don't have to worry about it. It is probably, given what you just said, the manufacturing is the most pure ingredients. And I've heard this from others. Might be a little bit more expensive than the garbage that the pharmaceutical company wants you have, but let's have a low time preference on this, and let's buy what is good and help companies like this grow and scale so that you can eventually create scale with manufacturing and get pricing down. But there's only so much you can do when you're using the best ingredients, and so I'm a huge fan. I'm going to buy some before cold and flu season comes. And so, Dr. Nazlie, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. This has been super fun. What is the website?
So it's Biovanta.com.
Biovanta.com.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And some of those drugs are not actually that cheap. I mean,
yeah, well, that is true.
We're actually cheaper.
Okay. Good.
It's like
I love that. It's better for us and it's cheaper. How many times do you hear that?
Not a lot, but I definitely I can't argue with you about stocking up, because chances are somebody in your family is going to need it. And 2-year shelf life. Yeah. So definitely Biovanta.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy.